Okay. Yes, faleminderit. Mirëmbrëma, faleminderit që keni ardhur në një edicion të Rhythms of Matter. Sonte kemi një arkitekt shumë të njohur dhe të suksesshëm nga Korea, nga Seuli, zoti Minsuk Cho. We can welcome on the stage. Thank you. Dhe sonte do të ta moderojmë bashkë me Xhexhin Islamin në këtë bisedën me arkitektin. Gjithashtu edhe Andi do ta bëjë një hyrje apo një introduction të biografisë. Okay, fillon.
It's a pleasure to have here Minsuk Cho, who is a South Korean architect and the founding principal of the Seoul-based practice Mass Studies, established in 2003. Born in Seoul, he studied architectural engineering at Yonsei University and later completed his graduate studies at Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture. Before returning to Korea, he worked in the United States and Europe with Polshek and Partners and OMA in Rotterdam, gaining experience in large-scale public projects and complex urban conditions. The architectural work of Mass Studies is grounded in research, context, and societal transformation. Rather than pursuing a singular formal language, the practice develops each project as a response to specific cultural, political, and urban realities. This approach is particularly relevant in the cities shaped by rapid change. In his work, Cho often speaks about compressed history, a condition in which multiple historical, social, and economic layers coexist within a short time span. This idea resonates strongly with post-transition contexts, such as here in Albania, where architectural is continually negotiating between past structures, present pressures, and future aspirations. Across a wide range of typologies, from housing, cultural buildings to pavilions and urban research projects, Mass Studies explores how architecture can mediate between individual life and collective space, permanence and temporality. Projects such as Pixel House, the Korea Pavilion at Shanghai World Expo, and the Serpentine Pavilion, Archipelagic Void, reflect an ongoing interest in aggregation, public interaction, and spatial systems rather than iconic form. Beyond the individual projects, Minsuk Cho work has consistently questions the role of architecture within society. This practice treats architecture not as a fixed object, but as an open framework capable of absorbing time, negotiation, and collective use. This approach was also evident in his role as a commissioner and co-curator of Korean Pavilion at the 2014 Venice Architectural Biennale, which was awarded the Golden Lion, recognizing a critical and research-driven way of engaging architecture with culture, history, and the city. Now I give the floor to Minsuk.
Hello, how are you? Thank you, Turla Cultural Center, Adelina, for organizing such a great occasion. I'm really honored. And also, Alban, thanks. Very nice to meet you. Thanks for the introduction. And Andy, very generous and insightful reading of our project and work. Yes, we're based in Seoul, and there are also three of our colleagues are here as well. And my office has been since 2003 years, and we are finishing our last month of the 23rd year this month. And for the last 18 months, we've been coming here quite regularly every 2 months. So this is our ninth trip somehow. So I am very usually, I mean, most of our work is other than the small things that we do, like pavilions or most projects are in Korea, and somehow this Albanian situation has been sort of exception for us. I hope you're okay with it, and we're still in the early stage, and this will be this will be our very first actual engagement with first sort of lecture. So I'm quite also excited. I'll sit down and I'll just go through. Hopefully within 30 minutes, I can. I like to share the what I title as a ground challenges. Of course, maybe, yeah. Thank you, thank you, Aban. We encounter various challenges, of course, in a kind of physical sense, these ground challenges, I call it, but also ground challenging can be a metaphorical one. And I think I just framed it in a 6 different categories just for this talk, which might resonate with what we do, but also with the architecture that we are trying, because I think it is a common sort of struggle, let's say, and exciting challenges, because I think more adversarial, I think for us is more meaningful, it has been. So the first one, I mean, these are also not mutually exclusive 6 different categories, but okay, let's start from the big one. Political sort of ground. Somehow, me as not as an architect, but as an architecture curator, as Andy mentioned, 12 years ago, I curated exhibition that tried to show a sort of hopefully comprehensive view of these two Koreas, North and South Korea, which has been a completely divided state now exactly 80 years now. And this was not because I was really knowledgeable or interested, but because there was at the time Biennale director Rem Koolhaas demanded each national pavilion has to come up with a narrative of this modernization history of 100 years. So it was called Absorbing Modernity from 1914 to 2014. And so immediately when I had this task, it occurred to me that 100 years ago, North Korea, South Korea didn't exist. It was one country. It was just under the Japanese occupation. So just showing my own country, South Korea, would be missing the half of the story. So somehow I had to find a way to show this two-country story because we're dealing with 100-year time frame. But then, I become a little bit of this almost megalomaniacal in terms of my own wishes. So I actually proposed to make direct contact with North Koreans. Of course, it's beyond impossible because we're not allowed to contact North Korea. So it become much more like almost like a Cold War political drama, uh, meeting the European diplomats and cultural institutions who have both contact with South and North Korea and so on. And it went on for almost 9 months period, and I have to give up last minute. But it was actually what we did clever thing was we knew that maybe this is a hopeless beyond my abilities. So we simultaneously somehow made a Plan B project, which is about the both country through the lens of architecture and urbanism, but uh, by other people other than North and South Koreans. So at the end, somehow it become. I mean, these are the numerous contexts that we try so hard until the last minute. Because this thing could have continue forever until now, but somehow because we had a deadline of June opening for the Venice Biennale, so we had to stop at the New Year of 2014. And then we switched gear, and then somehow it was really fascinating because we kind of set up a very higher goal, totally beyond us. But then a lot of people try to help, and diplomats, and they're introducing various people, a lot of Europeans who went to North Korea, urbanists, filmmakers, photographers, and they contribute the work. So in a way, become this kind of a very organic kind of a growth, and it kind of expanded into like all 6 continents and different time period, and kind of it went on. One of the very moving thing about this is that I really wanted to bring these people, everyone, to the opening because although they're not North Korea, we didn't engage directly. They didn't answer it, but then we wanted to make some kind of camaraderie almost, so that we can maybe make a connection, and it kind of grew. So even after the show, I mean, we got this nice recognition, Golden Lion, and then somehow it kind of continued. They meet in different places and make a symposiums and discussions. So this was that moment. And then one brief encounter with North Korea was months later. The North Korean ambassador from Rome came, made a stealth visit with his daughter. This is a picture, and he was very pleased with it actually. Because North Korean matter could be very much sensationalized and ridiculed, and this different. But I think we come up with a sort of much more, let's say, a neutral sort of a presentation. Then for me, it's also quite interesting that this kind of had many spin-offs, and I was one of these DMZ project. Probably you heard of this demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. It is Korea Peninsula is divided 4 kilometers wide. There's a buffer, and then 300 kilometers long. This uncharted, untouched territory for the last 80 years by humans. So there is this it becomes this amazing ecological reserve with 2,000 species and also more than 100 endangered species and so on. And this, I just show you some of the initial project. It was initiated by this artist, Choi Jae-eun. She became my dear friend and almost my mentor. And she imagined this, and she invited Shigeru Ban, who is also doing projects here. Shigeru Ban come up with this passage, floating passage using the existing trees passing through this DMZ territory. And with some moments of like pause and of contemplation, it's, somehow imagine bringing different artists, Olaf Eliasson, Nibo, Studio Mumbai, and so on. And one of our tasks was to come up with this. Actually, she suggested, for this ecological reserve, maybe we should have a seed bank and also library for ecology, all this documentation that should be in analog form. Digital form evaporates and you get this amazing data loss. So it somehow she asked me to imagine as a North and South Korea joint project. And then somehow I realized this seed bank, which I didn't know much about. As you know, there's about 3,000 uh, facilities like that now, like one in Svalbard and so on. Then what I learned was that all these facilities using underground space to have this vault preserve this important ecological the seed. So it could be a salt mine or kind of abandoned quarries and so on. And then I kind of clicked that there is actually 4 tunnels made by North Koreans during the 70s discovered as a sort of invasion purpose. But then this could be a perfect place for that. So somehow our idea expanded and working with different people. That's the artist, Choi Jae-eun and me, long time ago, I guess. And somehow we use this kind of intersection of this tunnel made by North Koreans. Now is a dark tourism site, but it's actually maybe we make an acupuncture point in the middle so that kind of marks the beginning, this intersection between the tunnel and this central military division line. And then maybe the seed bank grows one way, and then the other side, ecology library grows the other side. So this has been kind of ongoing, kind of complete imagination project with different people from different disciplines, creatives, but also scientists, biologists, and so on. And then one of the idea was that this acupuncture process, you make a little hole 10-meter deep, and this tunnel will be rebuilt, mark the beginning. And then you bring the helicopter, bring all the stone pieces on both Koreas and create a ground. And then that becomes a facility for the supporting facility for seed bank and this one ecology library. So this was just we haven't had a chance to present it to North Korean yet, but we keep going with this. And most recently, actually just opened her exhibition in Seoul City Museum. Also, it's titled Promise. Also, we are part of this exhibition. So this has been almost 12-year project that didn't stop yet. So that's our political part. Second challenge will be the historical one. Korea, as you know, because of this 20th century tumultuous history, we don't really have much historic things much because traditionally it's a wooden palace and so on, which is reconstructed. But as you probably know, of the Korea was not a strong. We are always this small country, the underdog country between big superpowers, China, Japan, America. Russia is also touching North Korea. So really, we didn't really, 20th century also, we didn't really have much left. So there is not much history. So they're very rare. And then, of course, later 20th century, the capitalism, I call it a second bombing, just sort of demolish everything and build these new towers and, become this kind of nouveau riche kind of a situation. we had a chance to actually look into one of the very historic figure who worked for Le Corbusier. One in the back, the Asian guy with the glasses in the back. He worked for Le Corbusier between in the mid 50s. He did mostly a Chandigarh project, in India project. Then when he came back to Korea, he built this French embassy, and which was a very important piece of modern architecture. We don't have that many left. However, this was built, but then it was so ambitious. His residence, and then this beautiful curved roof is his office, and then third is his other supporting building is in cascading composition. But then over the years, since it was built, it was completely grew very quickly and become this ad hoc sort of a mess. So when we are invited to do a competition 2017, it looked like this. It looked nothing like what we saw as this very important piece of Corbusian architecture. So basically, our task was to restore, practically rebuild, keeping all the materials, and actually this sabotaged roof, it become back to where it was, what it should look like, using all this remaining small amount of archive material they had with photos and some hand-drawn drawings. And then we kind of reconstruct the whole pavilion, which later become, now the French government calls it a French Kim Jong-un Pavilion, thankfully so. And then another task that we did it with a French firm. He's a Korean also, French-Korean firm, Sati. And our challenge was also, we have to have this very important building historically in a dignified situation, but also we have to provide 4 times more floor area because when it was built, it was only for 5 people, but now it's more than 100 French people working for that embassy. So somehow we have to be very big at the same time. We have to be a supporting character. So it become almost like this, the person who's doing the puppet in black or something like that. Also, it was a way to respond to this context, which is completely changed because over the 60 years, his apartment, his house was on top of hill. He was able to look at the ocean, the Han River 3 kilometers away, but now it's completely surrounded by 16-story apartment tower. I think this is what you're going through also in a way. So in a way, we have to be sort of responsive and kind of come up with this intermediate scale. So 10-story tower with other towers behind it. And then we have the 60-meter long horizontal building, which we call lazute. And also, of course, geometrically somehow it responds. So that's where we are. And this was opening, which is 3 years ago. And it's, I mean, for us, we get these very rare opportunities, but I think that any piece of history, I think, is also be highlighted and become, I think, it's significant, and they quite like it. So now this being exhibition space, also the lobby, the Lajite, and the Kim Jong-un Pavilion is quite frequently used cultural venue. Okay, the third challenge, topography. I think it's something I found very close to Albania is that Korea is a very mountainous country. So it's like 70% of this land is all mountains. So actually, in a way, it's a good thing because you don't get to build much area, but it's somehow we have to be very dense. We have to really, I mean, Seoul City is about 10 million people, and the whole surroundings are 25 million, but it's mostly in this flat area. But you always have a presence of mountain, which I think makes architect humble in a way. A lot of, in a way, other places, some cities built in complete flat place, and you make this kind of complete sort of conceptual drawings or radial or something like that. But we always had to work with this topography, but also rock. Korea is mostly granite, very hard, so you can't really fight with that much. So it's somehow traditionally that's the sensibility of that. And somehow we had to imagine 600 student dormitory in a really hilly campus in Daejeon. So idea was that how to create this kind of a topographic condition into benefit. And it's a 10-story dormitory with its common facility. And the campus level is actually up in the middle. So you have also only restrict less than 5-story building. So it kind of appears that way. Then the remaining 6 floors are spilling down to a 27-meter drop. And one of the nice thing that we came up with was that typically when you build a 10-story dormitory, you have this common area on the ground level, and then you take the elevator. But this one is kind of, interesting way that top 4 floors are for the female, and then bottom 4 floors are for the boys, and then in the middle, 5 and 6 floors are a common area, so they can actually walk and almost like a bridge, where they meet and have lunch and student center and so on. And somehow, so these each floors are completely different, and they also have this kind of a large scale spaces that what we call our space versus the super small pockets of individuals and different kind of scales of a let's say community size. So this it's working quite well. Even alleyway becomes like a big living room by sort of reducing the size of individual rooms by having a double-decker bed. And then we have these pockets to have a laundry dry or have a sort of hanging out lounge-like situation. So in a way, this was quite interesting interpretation of this very systematic way to create this topography specific condition and create almost like this old alleyway like situation with pockets and zigzagging corridors and so on. And very simple, not a expensive budget project, but also it kind of evokes this our old. I grew up in this kind of environment, so it was like this with alleyways and hill villages. With I don't know, you can call it favelas, or it was a lot of this now completely replaced, but it's also kind of translated into a more modern, systemic, but changing with the variations each floor and so on. And I mean, it goes on like that, but I'll go very quickly now. So basically, the one of our idea always has been these kind of how to create this modern city. You have this individual, very like almost from the cell, and then you have this to everyone, which is for no one in a way. So you have these two extreme, two polarizing conditions. Seems to ever more and more going like that. And in our sort of attitude has been that this, in a way, this social challenge with, I mean, with this topography is a kind of more recent one, last few decades, but we want to give a spectrum of various individuals and various size for us, what we call. So I think in that sense, that dormitory has its various small rooms or your own bed with your own window for ventilation and all that, and then to 300 people sit down lunch place. Oh, and there's something missing, but I think this is what our I think the title is missing for some reason, but this I think already switched to topographic challenges. Actually, what our first project we started, we actually volunteered not to do project in Tirana, but we like to engage with more topographic condition. So this was a Blora project that we did. It's a result. I mean, it's been on hold, but it looks like it's also it can start. But one of the idea was it was quite immense sort of site. We thought we'd be very good at dealing with the mountainous terrain, but you guys more expert, realize. And so we come up with something that we call it this calligraphic concept. You know, it's a kind of Asian artistic practice, but it's a literature and it's also artistic thing. But basically, the idea of that is that you have to really concentrate on what kind of line that you create, being very aware of also what is not touched. So the calligraphy, the beauty of it is a part that is touched and not touched. And in this case, more than 3/4 of the land we try to be intact. So we have to make this very precise line to kind of consolidate road and also infrastructures together with the buildings. So we kind of have this linear, very simple linear idea that it's really creating the in dialogue with the rocks and other natural setting. And it's really a stunning place. And then the another one is a Dermi project. We are now busy working on this with Atelier 4, which is also similar condition, but not as vertically challenged, but is also horizontally spread out. But also this one has this unique sort of delicate topography situation that you don't really get to see like this unless you're a bird. But you have this almost small pockets of this undulating landscape that you actually don't see the whole thing, but you see it as a sort of like a fragments of these buildings kind of nestled between these rocks and so on. And some part we use almost like a one story using the funicular and the hotel kind of facing it. So this is again, we've been exploring quite now diligently. And the fourth challenge is somehow related to this topography challenge, but it's a social challenge. That is we're making the cities more and more bigger and denser and taller, but the sociability is somehow compromised for some reason, modern city. So this is one example of where in the center of Seoul, old part next to the palace, we're asked to design a temple for Zen Buddhism temple. And it's a congregation not big, 250 people. And the idea was also four different buildings in this small campus, but it's also nestled between these tall towers next to one-story building behind. So in a way, there is also this Tirana situation, but this has been we took that as I mean, I think there was a sort of fantasy of Seoul becoming like a Singapore or Dubai or something, or the high-rise towers that's eventually we're gonna kind of reach. But then at a certain point, after a couple of the global economic crisis, we realize also in a good way that this thing will continue, and this kind of transient quality of urban situation it actually add to interesting quality, and we accept it. So there's a lot of it is actually I mean, of course, it could be also some moment could be interesting in this kind of total design, almost like maybe not in this kind of a democratic, what we call state in 21st century, together with this sort of neoliberal, very aggressive economy happening. It's going to be this unevenness that's happening. So that's kind of the challenge, that social challenge. And one of the things that we impose us is that, of course, we have to create this almost sanctuary-like quiet space for this meditation. The religion that is a meditation is a very important practice. But also they call it an everyday religion. So it's really engaged with the neighbors, and they're doing quite secular religion, I would say. So we kind of create this moment of this stillness that they're kind of gathering and together with a calm moment for this space. By the way, their religious symbol is circle. So they put it like a cross made out of wood, but we suggest as a very big opening that is a 9-meter tall steel wall with this uh, only 18 millimeter thin steel wall is hanging from above. And beautiful thing is, of course, moment is stillness, but you have this constant changes of light. So every time you go there, different time of the day, different season, you get this different atmospheric quality. And then behind it is also the for the memorial for the deceased ones. And another thing that we had this as a sort of Zen practice is that there was this old ginkgo tree was made 60 years ago, planted. So we kept it, and then as a kind of way to recognize also non-human agent is also part of it. Very important residence there, but also in a way continuous continuity in a temporal way, because there is so much about this history is disrupted and replaced by new ones. So you can see there's these trees are standing still while everything was 2 years of construction completely moving. And then somehow I discovered this amazing artist, Guatemalan artist. She's standing still as a naked person. And then there's this construction machines are creating this kind of the pit around her. It's really powerful thing. Actually, it's on YouTube. It's just, I was interesting to find the similarity and so on. And then speaking about the social quality, this was a map of body, acupuncture chart, and also the Seoul city map in Joseon Dynasty 300 years ago. It was understood, both cases understood as some sort of a continuous flow, the system of flows and how, we understood body as more holistic thing, not by organs and as a separate category. And in a way, our challenges become that this area also has changed so much that now, because of this disruptive condition with large buildings and small buildings, this old temple, which was there since the 60s, only accessible from one corner. But then we thought maybe we should make it a new building go around the whole periphery, like what the circle does. There's a symbol, but also try to make it accessible from every 7 alleyway directions, because mostly it was all dead end. And it becomes a social practice because we architect can come up with that, but you have to negotiate with the neighbors. So in a way, it become a very exciting challenge. But we're thankfully we had this amazing priest and the community, this congregation, gently persuading, and so that all these alleyway become connected. So it's almost, I call it a octopus with the 7 legs, and really allows also you approach this temple in a very multiple different ways. So this have a one facade. You can hardly see the whole thing, but it somehow become, and then it becomes this promenade of three-dimensionally. It goes around the top, and this is another story. That last alleyway was, we try to this empty lot, which was parking lot, become the children's cancer care hospital during the construction. So somehow we had to. We were very excited because we didn't know what to do with it, but then they needed to have a connection to this university medical campus behind. So we have to actually, during the construction, we volunteered to actually change our design and actually connect it for them. And so this was also, I think, I mean, it's because it's religious people that they were able to do all this. So that came later. And then this is the sort of the, from that becomes a three-dimensional, and then you can sort of look down, and this almost like where the protagonist. This is the fourth building that is monastery on top. So you can see this kind of a small interface building, and then temple and the memorial hall designed by Korean architect, which is specialized in this traditional genre. We collaborated together with the little madang garden at the center, all element together with this 21st century bombastic tower next to it, and the palace also behind. So it's kind of almost like a end credit of a movie where you can see the whole protagonist there as some kind of urban polyphony, I guess you can call it. And in a way, the Serpentine Pavilion came out of that because also didn't want to have like this imposed object in the middle, which could be admired. I mean, there's so many great people who can do that, but in this case, we really wanted to deal with the periphery. What's happening where people didn't touch, so in between trees and something very close to the existing gallery and so on. And we create a madang, what we call, which is void at the center. And then we kind of programmed it. In fact, the music that you've been listening is one of the 5 wings that we call it gallery. And then they suggest to make a music gallery or sound installation. So this was a good friend of mine has been composing also the amazing music for the last 30 years, and he made a soundtrack for our building. So this was what I chose to play here. So in a way that this also Madang area is sort of anti-monument, because when you walk in, typically you have this wow dome moment, but this is when you walk in at the center, there's basically nothing, especially when people are packed. It's just a sky. It's quite beautiful. I was so happy. And then there are also some people find it very special moment to actually have like a proposals. Although building is gone now, they'll remember this forever. And there is this will be also happening again, actually rebuilt. So it's also very excited about that. And so there was also my friend Amiya. She's amazing choreographer. She brought the 12 people troupe, performed the piece called North Korean Dance. She actually was inspired. Her piece she's amazing, but inspired by our exhibition. So she made also collaborate with the North Korea trained dancer. She found it from Japan, and she kind of interpreted it. So I mean, it's nothing like what you think of North Korean, but she really learned the technique and so on. This is how it ends at the end. Okay, so now we have another social challenge. And one of these exhibition item that I show was Chun Min-jo photographer's picture in 1978 when the Korea Seoul was becoming this high rise, and this was the agriculture. And I literally, this was my, I was 12 years then. So I really grew up in the apartment looking out the window, and there's like thatch roof huts with cows in front of me. So it was very surreal, but it was very everyday sort of a thing for me. So my childhood composed of very modern, sort of really enthusiastic new world, brave new world, together with this old world together. But then I took this picture from when we visited Tirana a couple of years ago, and I think it was shockingly similar in a way, and in a way like culturally, I know this is very exciting. Then I can also be very much part of it. I feel comfortable, but then not for the nostalgic reason, but because also I have some concerns about it, because this moment is also quickly turned into something much more maybe boring, and maybe this maybe deal with the social issue could be a compromise, because all this high-rise building doesn't really do that much. So somehow our ground challenge 5 is a social in a very vertical condition. And from the very beginning of our practice, 2004, we have a very strange trajectory as a firm. That early stage, we had a tiny project, and then second year we did biggest building, boom, and our company grew. And then I retry, and then I got disappointed or not so happy with it. So, and then we got smaller. So, and then now we are somewhere in between, and it's been interesting journey. But this is a 100-meter tall building, 172 units, and this idea was to create these 5-story volumes of 14 different locations that you have the garden, but towers are usually very lonely typology. Maybe you get rich and people live in a high rise, but you can only look out and you don't really see your neighbors. But maybe there's the trees you can plant there. So we designed in 2004. We got quite early on, so it wasn't like much of that around. And then idea was in this case we call it missing matrix. So you took out. It was in order to satisfy also the FAR, the maximum buildable area. So and then we can do something with it. And also this has this it's two tower actually, two separate cores, but kind of connected. And there's some of the units have bridges, and they have a rich kind of diverse, let's say, urbanity inside. So you get this massive scale, but then you have this sort of an intermediate scale, let's say. And there's this moment, could be like I call this like almost New York tenement house back garden situation. You get this cozy feel in 20-story. And then we built another one next. We designed another one, 2005. We designed it, 2009. We finished it. We call it bundle matrix. This is again this idea. Also have this structure idea, but this slender cubes. You create this in between bridges, and there's small gardens. Almost every floor has this. And typically, you have when you're architect working for developer, you have this. You're valued by how minimize the common space. So you get this very suffocating elevator ride and like looking at your phone, and then you have opens up, and then you have this no window situation with the corridor, and then you just run right like that. But this one also create this natural light condition, and it's let's say we did our best with creating more general space, working with this kind of let's say neoliberal economy, capitalistic kind of situation, let's say. And then, but this was also our prototyping idea in a way that sometimes we were asked to do design different site, but then we realized we call this initial the 36-story tower as a bundle matrix. And we use this opportunity, but then this become a much smaller, 10-story high, but also we can come up with this bundle in a kind of shorter way. So we call it a stocky bundle, and it has a 99 studio units. So in a way, this idea can be proliferated, and maybe what it does is that you have this 3 volumes that is also leaning against each other, but then you have this, it creates this volume inside, contains some common space there also. They actually use it quite well. So this is kind of leads to another project that we're doing. This was our first project in Tirana, and this was the idea was that this Avrit Road. This is an interregional road that connects to Macedonia, and the client wanted to have this area as almost like a gateway, and this Avrit Road becomes this much wider interregional road connecting to other regions. So there are a lot of goods coming, fruits and vegetables and all that. So they need a big warehouse, but also on top of that, they wanted to build an apartment for the profits, but also to create a community. But one of the interesting things they asked was warehouse, apartment, and urban farming community garden, which we just saw amazing example there. So in a way, I kind of got that immediately because as I show you in the picture, the farm, cows, and but these urbanity together coexisting with this previous what happened, the good things can coexist. In fact, when I was in New York, also I try imagine like all the farming, which become actually what's happening there also in a very surprising way. But then another thing was for us, it was an interesting way to revisit this. Hilberzheimer is actually my favorite architect, one of them in history, Bauhaus. He come up with this radically modern environment with this 1924 with this high-rise city. You know about this one, right? This podium as a sort of workspace, and then there's a separation between pedestrian and car. And basically, the client wanted to have this something like that with this, with except the ground level is more about this goods warehouse, and then a tower on top. Then the thing about warehouse, this is one of my favorite office space in New York, office building, but it was initially designed and built as a warehouse in the Chelsea area because it was when High Line was a sort of goods bringing, this was a storage, but it's an entire New York block size. And because of this generous height, 3.9 meter, It become now like Martha Stewart has a sort of their headquarter there, and it become like also each level you can reach with the trucks. So inside become this real urban condition, which we found it fascinating. Actually, Bjarke Ingels had his first office was there. I was like, long time ago when I had a practice, I designed the yoga Pilates studio there also when I had my first practice before math studies. So basically the site is about two phases. The left one is the first phase and the second one is a little larger. It's almost the length of New York size. So we kind of imagine this kind of a situation that later it could convert it into also prime office space when um, Tirana becomes more Paris and in Nice. But well, the different thing we did was, unlike a Hilverzheimer, you had this very strict two planes, pedestrian and car. We kind of imagined this podium as a step-tiered one, almost like a hill village. So actually, almost every floor has an outdoor, let's say, unlike this unifying one floor, but basically all these apartments, tower sitting on top, has three levels, and then that's the model. And then this in-between space, ground level is just continuous, almost like a street mall open. But then this part is connected to the other end, so it kind of continues up. So almost every level has this kind of a common garden. Also, the roof of this shorter one in front will be also the community garden connected by the bridges. So it's almost because I think this dense high-rise development, I think that's the kind of for us interested in this innovation or the social quality of these gatherings and so on. So with sort of that has been, and then of course you guys almost had this mountain village situation, but in a kind of a city condition. So the left side will be the first one that we're exploring. We're getting into more detail. The later, followed by the later part, but it's also very complex side. So it has this almost not forcefully designed like that, but kind of ad hoc quality. And that's the ground level of this commercial street. With the warehouses, maybe eventually will become a office space. And then this is the different level of this, what is in front, the gardens. I can totally bring this. Thanks for showing this today. And another one that we're working on is also a little bit closer to center. And this is also quite interesting site because it has this middle ring road. There's this very close to the center. And initially, we were asked to design some sort of shopping center with a podium with the tower on top. Then I looked at the quite important other public civic spaces in Tirana, Skanderberg Square, and also and then there's also shopping centers. But somehow we found out that this area is quite known for all these old markets there. So and then we looked at the towers that is being developed. Of course, there are amazing architects that I admire, and there are like different heights. And I mean, it's not really, I think, height competition. I don't think we're all interested in that, but that you can do it in Dubai or other or Shanghai or But I think I think each one try to bring this kind of civic quality to this new environment. And one of the things we came up with was that initially we had this very irregular site, what used to be the restaurant, and it was a quite big volume tower. But what we did was we made it smaller volume, so it's almost like a collective form, not as a singular thing. And then this three tower become like this giant column to support what we call fourth tower, floating tower, and which become sort of the roof of this sort of very civic space at the bottom. And then what happened in between this, just before that, was that basically I somehow convinced our client, very open-minded, that why don't I'll say me as a visitor, or I will never come to shopping mall when I come to Tirana, but you have this great markets there. So why don't you make this as a sort of vertical market? And he was very open to that. And also, I thought this was. I mean, you have this kind of nice dwelling on top, suitable for that area, but lower part could be much more engaging with the local community, let's say. And he was very open. So basically, idea was that this three tower with a floating tower in the middle contain this volume that is very civic, and that's a site. That's a site, and that's a ground level. And then this is a ground level where you have this open market situation. And this is a center where the floating tower becomes the sort of a roof. The ceiling is almost 10-story high volume. 4 levels of the ground level and then 1 level below, and then you have this kind of a stacked market connected by escalator. And then this space. Of course, we like to have something civic and mural there, so I just use the one artist that I know quite well. And it just I got his permit. Of course, somebody can suggest other, but then this side also, this center could be like so open and with air, so you can have, I don't know, weddings, or maybe you can have architecture festival there, or you can imagine different things. And also this mural becomes a sort of ceiling pane, so this kind of creates a sort of a common, let's say, I don't know, some civic quality, I say. And then it goes up, and then also third level, and so on. So these are the one of these quite important urban spaces like Rockefeller Center skating rink, or Norman Foster's Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, where all the Filipino maids gather every weekend, or Lina Bobadi's MASP in Sao Paulo, MVRDB, the market. There's some Belgian, and this one is in Barcelona, where it's an actual market with a mirror ceiling. They had an architecture festival. I made a talk there, and it was actually really a amazing venue. And this one also, I took the picture in Cambodia, Phnom Penh, in the Art Deco time. French architect designed it. It was also quite amazing how this thing is so thriving. And the last 2 images also I took it. One of my favorite building in Hong Kong, which is this amazing vertical market, which is also infrastructure of this hill village. And this is a skin. The upper part is we did this office building, and it's like a perforated half tube that creates the sort of a nice ventilation, but also sunshade. And this tower, 3 tower, there's a floating tower connected, then becomes quite a large footprint. So in a way, it's a kind of unique typology. But also top of this floating tower, it becomes like a nice restaurant, and also with the swimming pool in the middle, with the gym and so on. So you had this kind of a public at the lower level and the top level. And then we use the same mural mirrored and become like a swimming pool tile, maybe. And then it's so this is view. I think it's kind of we kind of like the quality that almost it doesn't look like it belonged to any period, let's say. And then I just quickly one more project, but the last section is a public ground I'm talking about. Of course, it's related to social challenges and other things, but in this case, public ground is now more and more in where I practice in Korea, maybe less so in Albania. Public ground is really getting diminished, and now because the stage of this urban development in Seoul is quite now later, maybe become middle age or something. So it become a much more, let's say, all the good sites are taken. And now all this public sector, when they want to do something ambitious with good for the public with the tax money, what usually that's given is really has no site or very challenging site. Like we have to do something great, but there hardly any site. And this is a case that we won this competition 2018, and it's the old power plant that is abandoned because they built a new one next to it. And somehow, and it's by the Han River. So then you have this in front of it. It's not like a Tate Modern London where you have this South Bank and great pedestrian thing, but as you can see, you have a great view, but you have no connection to the river, just flyovers. And because it's part of this very let's say hectic compressed urban, this is a ground condition. So basically the idea was that we create this roof as a podium for public. You can directly take the escalator without getting into the inside, and it really becomes this floating sort of a plaza above, 18 meters above. And also you bring the large elevator will bring all the food trucks and other things, so you can really be a stage for really with amazing view. So this is now under construction, and this is an escalator, and we really had to imagine something almost surreal, but it kind of out of necessity, because in Seoul, everything along this river becomes this privatized apartment with private living rooms with this also cars fly over. So that's like a double barricaded situation with this great river contact, and then we're using this large space to connect. And also there's a one power plant is renovated completely, got it out and become this kind of a cultural space. The other one is kept intact as an industrial relic, and so on. I think I'm gonna go maybe too much, but this is also Cinematheque that we just opened. we have to imagine this cinematheque for independent films to screen, because now there's cinemas dying, as you know, because of thanks to streaming and all that. But this was a Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook director's dream project. So we just opened it up. Basically, the idea was this small land, but 20-meter deep, 40-meter high, and you have this stacked up, alternating solid and void. We call it montage 425. And it's a kind of unique attempt, because also this area is where filmmaking happened. Like, it used to be Hollywood of Seoul, Chungmuro area. So it's also, its idea was to maintain this cultural ecosystem, stay in the same place. Sometimes this large development can ignore that. So we are very happy to be part of this, but in a way, it's also very cacophonous, modern towers next to these old alleyways. But we kind of we come up with a strategy. Maybe this volume can be a part of tower category, but also it's in small pieces almost. So and then lastly, it's somehow related. I thought, because we're doing last project I'm showing is the mosaic area. This was also 2 visits ago, so 4 months ago. Prime Minister asked us to do a pro bono project, so we are just like, thank you. We were very happy to do it, public project. So this mosaic area, as you know very well, our collaborator Ilya is did this beautiful pavilion for this mosaic, the archaeology site. But we looked at also, there's also this very modern, almost futuristic, dense buildings on its way, but they wanted to maintain this mosaic area as it is. With, I think it's really good to have this kind of old history of the social housing that was made in Soviet time, but still works nicely as a nice sort of authentic community, not as like a tourist thing. But so we looked into ways to, we counted all the parking, including legal and illegal, about 1,000 of them. And then somehow we thought of it, the way to how to relieve this with this parking demand and create this common space. In fact, also we brought the urban farming as an element, and also they're taking down all the illegal things. So we kind of identify everything, and also every tree. We scan the whole thing, 3D scan the whole thing. And then also there's one inspiring moment is that only place that is car free, really kind of works as a only place where children play at night there, with little ping pongs and also chess games of all people. And then we come up with the ways to provide the parking, the machine parking, like Korean style, as a one example. Maybe not here, but also different possibilities. But then we create this not just a random parking street, but how to create a place with a sort of identifiable plaza space, using, not touching much with existing structures. So before and after, before and after. I'll just go very quickly. This is Ilya. But then, in order to relieve this parking stress, we thought of this, the corner had a very interesting entities, which is a large roundabout, Zoguizi roundabout, you probably know. And today I found out there's also interesting history that comes with it, because there was this underground story. We found out, we had no idea this was an attempt. But the thing about roundabout for me is a really product of this car-centric city. Also very, like Triumphal Arch is very much, for me, is like the authoritarian or king empire. You know, you have this monument standing in the middle and you cannot access it. And Korea has been that way too for quite some time during the dictatorship time. But this is the main street. This is where the palace begins. And this had a big trees, 18-lane road. This is the center. But then in 2009, they widened it. And then they thought it was a joke, that the biggest joke was the world's largest traffic divider, because it's also disconnected to the urban fabric. So actually only 3 years ago, they connected to the one side, which has a theater there, National Theater. So now it's like a very really beloved area. Like actually the recent presidential inauguration happened on that plaza. And then the another one is the city hall. The building is built in the Japanese time, and there's a roundabout there. And usually, roundabout is also where you people occupy when there's a revolution happen, right? This is like amazing political moment, because it sort of symbolizes authoritarian state. But this time in Korea was 2002, when we are hosting a World Cup, and 7 million people were out on the street cheering, because we went to somehow final, semi-final. beating Italy and Spain. I'm very sorry, but then so then it become naturally it become a plaza connected to the city hall. So now, like winter time, right now they have a skating rink, and then during the whole year it has a different program. So somehow, and then there's another example is the number one treasure in Korea because we are the fortress city, and there is a southern gate. It was truncated from everywhere with this little triumphal arch Champs-Élysées situation, but then we reconnected. So somehow these things are all I promoted. And then this is on I'll just go, I mean, this I can skip it, side note, related. So we come up with this roundabout attached to this mosaic area. And then you get this nice also plaza in front of this mosaic area. And then the central, the circle becomes a spiral parking building. And you have a basement and the above, about 15-meter tall building. And the basement has also 3 stories as well. You can cover about all the illegal number, the parking that the mosaic area has. And then we had this sort of a additional ring of circulations, fire escape, 3 stairs and 2 elevators. But also, they suggest to make something playful and more inclusive. So we think of it as it has different programs. Let's say we can have an art gallery like this here, or some kind of a play area. Then also, we thought maybe the most significant thing is maybe this using this plaza as a theater, and we can make almost a La Scala theater size outdoor opera theater or performance. So you have a stage there and different infrastructure. And then the ends with the roof. So this is a sort of spiral parking. But then you had this additional wood, and we were thinking of this terracotta tubes as a screen. And then you have unfolded elevation of these different openings, but in a kind of facing different direction because it's kind of it brings attention. And then this is one of the pavilion that we did many years ago in Gwangju, tiny little 9-meter diameter, but we made a subtraction sort of strategy to create this Boolean subtraction that we call it a vacant house, and you can people student can play there, and then inside is like a little garden there, and then somehow it became also a large building. It's a contemporary art museum. We kind of inspired by our own project without being manneristic, I guess. And this is a quite sculptural building, but also it's an art gallery inside. But art gallery is being become a lot more than art gallery actually because it's quite loved in the public space. And you can see this thing is happening. And then also the rooftop becomes like a theater in a good season, and um, also these markets and so on. So these are some of the moments in comparison of this tiny project and this larger building. Is left and right is all different comparison. How people sort of you had this one purpose, but this maybe the parking also can have a lot other things around, and it's almost a purpose. It's maybe the tool becomes like a goal itself, and so on. And some of the Serpentine Pavilion also we come up with the first time I think we did come up with the play structure, which was very popular. So this could be the theater with almost comparable size of this proscenium arch of La Scala, nighttime. Also, I like the moment that when someone parks at the third level and then you come out and then you're in the backstage seat almost. So yeah, that could be an interesting urban experience. I think I'm mostly end of it now. And the ground level is basically the building is works like a bench, so and then you can park your bicycles, and this way you can park and change to scooters or and so on. And you also connected to the city in a different with the different windows. So that's I think that's it. Thank you for I think much longer than I thought, but thank you.
So, Georgie, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was a really intense presentation, which I enjoyed a lot. And thanks for that. It's inspiring and simple. Showing projects helps, of course, a lot the understanding of what you do. So I really thank you for that. It's a very responsive architecture, in my opinion.
Thank you very much.
So we'll try to have some minutes of a conversation.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we'll try to have some minutes of conversation about your architecture, and probably at the end we'll collect some questions from the audience, which I think will have some curiosity this time about your proposals here in Albania. Let me start with what I noticed, and probably you correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't focus much on the form, on shaping architecture, or on creating iconic buildings per se, or in having a proper style. But you focus on problem solving, on context, on the challenges that rise from the site itself. So how do you approach a site or a city or a new territory? What you do first? You meet people, you make research, or how it works?
It's I said this before, but I think architects confronted by two almost oppositional conditions, often combined. But what is a very rare case that you run into a beautiful site, then all my motivation becomes like how to make this fairy tale work, how to have our creation coexist with this beauty, almost like meeting this beautiful person and having a spending life together. So you have to really imagine in a very careful way. But in most cases, it's the other way around. Usually, especially where I'm coming from, you have instead of this running into a beauty, you encounter some kind of a crime site situation, or like almost like a war zone, and which is and then like how the hell this happened? But then somehow you have to find a good reason to engage it. So you almost become like this investigative detective or something, because then you start to look back at the history and so on. So the beautiful one, you only imagine like a future, what to do with this beautiful site and without ruining it, and then the other case will be actually looking into context and histories and how this came about in order to get sort of familiarize and find some way to connect and contribute. So usually it's really the combination, those two things together, because it's different degrees.
Yeah. So having worked in Korea, in New York, in Europe, okay, and globally, what lessons have you learned about the differences and similarities in architecture across cultures? Or what you think can be universal and what has to be really tailor-made in design?
I mean, what I learned, because I'm coming from kind of very unique Korean situation, which they call it in a very big change, right? I show you my childhood time, and somehow it developed fast developing country, and then I moved to New York and spent some time in Europe. But then at the end, I found no place is perfect, and it's constantly changing. And these things also, you think it's in a good place, but these things also precarious. It changes. It has an expiration date almost. As you can see, what's happening in this world is so much change happening, and I don't know where to put myself a position. But I think there are definitely important values that we can continue in a consistent way, no matter what the situation is. But as an architect, as a creative, I think is quite myself always foreign to even my own culture, because I think there is always this kind of location-based cliches and something that is produced that is quite rigid. But in reality, it's really we're also in this moment of incredible velocity of change. So I really find myself. Uh, Constantly, although I've been in Korea 23 years, I feel very new to this place. And even it's not a big place, but I go 1 hour away from Seoul by high-speed train, and I feel like I'm in a different country. In a way, I come to this place, beautiful place. I feel like very home here. So when I see all the album musics, and somehow culturally, there's also shared culture that I identify, like there's a Pink Floyd, Bjork, or something like all this. Okay, this is I can hang here. And
Tula is a special place.
yeah, I think it's quite unique in that sense. So I would find myself yeah, it's I think world has been organized in a very different way. The locality and this whole shared things. I mean, each one comes with good and bad, right? Mm. And it's constantly evolving. So
Okay. Shall we go to art, probably?
Music.
Music,
Ah.
but
I
I noticed also art. He mentioned a lot of collaborations with artists. So, I mean, probably it's your question.
I was curious to know because of the pavilion, the willow and the moonlight.
Yeah, memory.
That's
Ah.
the 6 channel installation, sound
Yes.
installation.
Yeah.
You know, if you could tell us something about that, you know,
Ah.
and your music artist that he
Yeah.
installed.
No, no, thank you for mentioning it because again, this is actually my second time to bring out music. I did it last year in America. Um, this was really specially made for pavilion, so somehow it become our song when I had to introduce some music. But it's very special for me because this friend I know, Chang Yong-gyu, has been really amazing uh, force, influence from my generation. I've known him for 30 years, late 90s. And you know, where they're coming from the generation that we grab everything that interesting music and we can try to copy and sort of assimilate. But then also he started looking at also our own tradition. And somehow he mastered pretty much every instrument and every style of music because he's so constantly working with contemporary choreographers or movie filmmakers or a lot of this TV drama music also he makes. So also he has his own unique project, which is a band, different projects. And so it's what is very interesting is that I mean the world getting flat is not necessarily the perfect way to put it for this, but for him is everything is on the same table and you can almost pick and choose. And in this case, of course, he wanted to bring something traditional Korean with elements that he not sample. He actually replayed it with the singer. They're all original, but then together with this electronic music, and it kind of becomes something else. The third thing, in a way. I think that's and he has so many other things like that. So, in a way, this kind of cultural production have become quite familiar in the contemporary art scene and also movies, architecture, maybe some in certain ways. I think as we are again this underdog, try to learn from everywhere and then bring everything together. And I don't know, it's called bibimbap style, or yeah, I don't know, this Korean mix everything, the way of eating, but. I think it's an interesting moment, and this is a good example for that. Yeah.
So how is I mean, we all have influences of, especially when we're young. So some music is a soundtrack of our life, you know.
Yes.
So can you tell us what was your influence or some part of your life which came to you? Or
Surprisingly, when I was little, I was trained as a classical piano playing. I've done until Chopin and Bach and things like that.
right?
Yeah. Then, of course, when I saw this, all this list, Pink Floyd and all that, I mean, this was my later. And yeah, I also was glad to see Rosalia there.
Oh yeah, all right.
But this is my recent discovery, so I'm trying to be updated with that too. I mean, she's amazing. So I was like, you have said this, yeah.
You heard the latest album?
Yeah. This is how I know. Before this
all right, okay.
reggaeton thing, I mean,
Yes.
that's not my genre necessarily.
Yes, me neither. But
This
you know,
the propane sacred thing is beautiful. I wish.
it's amazing how she mixed all different kinds.
But she's clever. Because
She's
I
clever,
think
yeah.
she's like a new Bjork, but she got like a blessing in that album, right? The Bjork, bringing Bjork in it, so it's almost she become like a legit. I like that very much.
Okay, let's go back to something I noticed during your presentation. You push a lot on the public.
Yes.
Public space, okay, the public use of spaces, and yeah, what do you think is right thing to do? The involvement of public in decision making, or delegation to professionals, probably politicians sometimes, or is it midway between these two? I mean,
I don't know, you call it midway. Sounds a little bit allusion should happen when you say midway or compromise, but I do think that it should come from both sides. No. Like I can explain to you for this power plant project. Is we won the competition 2018, and we saw really unique thing about this Korean situation is that all this public project, large money is poured into it. Although this one is not necessarily high budget project, we're struggling with it, but they really build building first, and they don't really know what to do with it. Hardware comes first, but I think it should be obviously the other way around. I think the Cinematheque is a good example of grassroots people. They advocate it, and then the user somehow become this important role during the process. And then of course politics changes, so now it's a little bit different story. But again, really, it's always precarious. It is no solid. I mean, that's what the democracy does too, right? You're not in this kind of a long term, some long, I don't know, the autocratic regime. Then you can have this like but you have to really maneuver always. But for this power plant project, we really were so frustrated by not having much input of actual space, and we're designing this conversion project as a sort of technician. So when we had a chance to make an exhibition for the Seoul Architecture Biennale, we actually had a very quite engaging public event every week explaining, and then bringing all the audience. They are mostly architecture students and architects who comes to Biennale. So they had notes they we encouraged to leave. We got like 600 post-it notes and things like that, and they actually had a very good reactions, productive criticisms, and so on. And in fact, now I'm teaching in America, in Boston, Cambridge, and I'm bringing a student to work on this one also for the future of it. So every time I have a opportunity for when we do a public project, I am very compelled to really open up as if what we're doing is not complex enough to have more opinions. And I think it's healthy that way. Because I don't think architecture, especially the public project, as this pure thing that operate and you bring the God's gift to the world. You know, maybe there's certain people can operate that way. I don't know, but it's really for me is much more about the process and sort of making this thing together. Of course, we have some expertise that we if you get accounted for. But
so just let me reflect a little bit more about
yeah,
this. I mean, usually we try to anticipate the public behavior
yes.
by designing or shaping it through projects. Uh, do you have a reverse a story probably where the public, okay, went uh, went further than your expectations, or just used the thing in a totally different way?
All the time. Yeah. Usually, I'm very happy to discover that. Yeah. Any public attempt, I don't know, it's also Korea is so very innocent, and people are in this discovering mode of this public attempt. Because you may know, but public space in Korea was very discouraged during the more depressive time, because people will ignite protests and things like that. So that's why this whole roundabout story is also part of that narrative in urban history of Seoul. But now we do this even very small, dismal little attempt. It gets quite explosive, actually. So I'm always anticipating new, unexpected things. Like yoga in this thing was completely, but that I think that's very particular Instagram culture, or sometimes gets very surreal.
But I think on my side that I mean we're not good at really anticipating what's happening with our designs. That's why I pushed towards this. We have to listen more as architects
Yes.
sometimes, and yeah, that's the right answer I was expecting. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
And yeah, let's go to two more terms that I really would like to ask you about:
Mm.
sustainability and heritage.
Yeah.
there is two terms that we are often misusing, often not understanding, and often neglecting. So how would you interpret them?
Sustainability and heritage as some sort of a pair, two separate things.
You can mix them if you need.
I mean, heritage, I touch upon some part of that because we do really, Korea had this very quickly in a very devastating state after the war and then quick wealth whatsoever. It made it very amnesic. Amnesia. They want to forget about the past and they want to reinvent themselves in the whole new city, whole new environment, new car, new lifestyle. And I hope, and then now we are regretting so much of that. And I can see these also has this kind of explosion in the energy. What I discover here is that, but really, I think you should not being because it's nostalgic or anything, but I think it's very important to remember the what you can call heritage or important things that happened in the past. I think that reflects in the design of the city and how to you treat the city, how to make this grow. I think that's something you need to be careful because not learning from Korea's bad mistakes, maybe I can tell you that. And sustainability, I think, it's a really Koreans. I mean, it's not a good example to practice. I mean, I can't really be preach as much. Although I do practice this no car life and walking 15-minute city, something that I thought was a secret from doing because I thought this would be the only way I can survive when I move back to Korea. Like I'm not gonna use any car much and mostly like everything close by and but then of course it become a lot of people think of the same thing but I think Albania, especially Tirana, has a perfect setting for decent size. Everything could be a walking distance and have this other vehicles, smaller sort of what do you call it, vehicles that you can make it totally feasible. I think I mean that you are in a better position, I think. Also, at least you don't have to fly over everywhere, and somehow we take it as a not the beauty as a crime site, but somehow we are working with it because I don't believe in completely tabula rasa and clean slate and rebuild everything from the scratch. That's not feasible, and also that's so 20th century. So what we are showing is very much built on the ruins of 20th century. But before you make all these horrible ruins and mistake, I think you can think through and yeah, do it more sensible things. Yeah. So you don't have to repeat mistakes. Mm.
Thank you. I think the sustainability issue. I mean, it's the sustainable lifestyle. It's very good promoted, very well promoted through your Mosaic project. I mean, it's very simple and very public and very open to car-free use of the space. So. Okay.
Thank you.
Last question. I would want to skip away from architecture.
Please. Just do away with it.
Yeah. What about your lifestyle?
Lifestyle. What?
Tell us something.
Rituals.
Rituals. What do you have? I try to quit smoking. I quit smoking all the time, so it's very
That's easy. Easy to quit.
habitual quit smoker, which is bad thing. I don't know. I mean, it's my life revolves around architecture very much. I think a lot of people need something else to get stress relief, but somehow I relieve stress through other projects away from the one that stressed me out. So which is like an ultimate cycle, move around. But somehow it's been like that. I respect people who need some other activities to get away and get energized. I don't know, play golf or climb up mountains. But somehow I really didn't have the need, and I so enjoying it. So I mean, that's terrible trap, huh? But somehow I also am surrounded by people like that in a different discipline, artists and some other creative types. Close people are like that, so it's yeah.
Shall we collect some questions from the audience?
Please.
Dikush na e pyetje apo?
Thank you so much for the sharing all the projects. Really, really beautiful to see how different perspectives come also into Albania.
Thank you very much.
The question I have revolves around the latest, the roundabout that you were saying. Really inspiring. I think it's also a technical question on traffic, as you know. Here it's quite an issue on its own. I'm wondering how the connection between the architectural form, the theater, the outdoor space, but also like the traffic flow simulation, what has been considered and how that connects with the experience itself of the reality versus the concept.
No, thank you very much. I mean, this was we started out as these two visits. We got this pro bono 2 months ago, and then for me, the roundabout was almost no-brainer because I've seen this very feasible from my own city as being very car-centric to how it's transformed and creating all this what symbolizes. I mean, this all this social symbolic connotation this roundabout has for me is very comfortable and that works. Of course, traffic will be a little bit not as same, but you also I think you can go around different parts. So of course you need a it's more about the decision and it's more about what you're prioritizing. But the airport traffic and all that, instead of going around, forever, you can go around other blocks or there could be other ways to do it. So I think we're now they seem to be quite seriously interested. So they're looking into maybe the traffic experts also to organize it, whether also this direction of the decision for direction. Yeah. But I think it's definitely highlights the added value and solve few things and have a more civic quality. I think for me personally, it's I'm quite I don't know maybe without sounding too arrogant, quite confident that this could work here. Thank you for the question.
Hello. First of all, I want to thank you for the presentation. It was very intense and very nice.
Thank you.
Um, Referring to the project that you presented in the military belt, the intervention in the military belt that separates North Korea and South Korea. Of course, very, very interesting, and in a certain way, it shows your concern regarding the unity of the two Koreas, the unity not in terms of statehood, but in terms of culture and identity. That means that you yourself, of course, you refer to this identity because you were born there, and the religion, the philosophy, the way of life in Korea has influenced in your formation as an architect. And coming back to that, deep inside, would you like to be remembered as a representative of the Korean architecture or one of the representative of the international style?
I don't have the, I don't think of myself that way. But Korean, North Korea, I mean, that's something that it grown on me because again, it was sort of accidentally the task was looking at 100 years. So then I'm just average South Korean who's as much know much about or interested in North Korea, and then somehow I had to do the test, and then it kind of I met so many people, so then it could become this really long ongoing thing, which is a lot of times life can evolve that way, right? You just stumble on something, and then you make this like-minded people, and that has been a very rewarding and enriching experience. But I mean, I like architecture also in that North Korea, South Korea situation that as a sort of window to understand other people. I think also architect can be in a good way also diplomats, huh? Because you go to very foreign places and it's a great medium to really engage and do something together in the most positive, peaceful state. It's a really beautiful profession in that way. And I think in a way, even small exhibition together, the idea was very exciting. Like I say, like teacher can explain 1,000 words, but one architecture can explain like million words almost, right? So this is really a great thing that we're doing. And I don't know. So for that reason, I'm also very fortunate and let's say blessed to have following many creative minds in my own field, but different artists, different musicians throughout my whole lifetime, and that become a really interesting entry point to understand certain part of the world. You know, I like certain Chinese artists because this person make me understand the 20th century, the whole thing that is very similar but different from Korea. Like for example, and my work someday I think it could be a good entry point if somebody can understand as a 21st century Korea. There's this firm, and it can be an interesting access point of how the South Korea has evolved at that stage, and somehow also how it relates to the rest of the world. And it could be maybe I'll be very honored to be understood it that way. Yeah. Right. And so,
I should ask a question myself.
Yes.
We were talking before about your pavilions and that
Huh?
have done almost 23 pavilions since you opened the office. And but what is interesting, especially the pavilion works that you have done, is that you see your distilled concepts or way how you perceive and work architecture.
Yeah.
And how do you manage to have this in a temporal structure, in this sort of temporary, and you give this um, sort of timelessness to it. How do you achieve that, and how do you manage doing that?
I mean, thanks for interest in pavilions. For some reason, I recently had a talk about the pavilion. I titled it as a pavilion effect. Pavilion in actually in French word is papillon, is butterfly, right? So it's almost like a butterfly effect of this pavilion genre, has how it has been evolved. Like Venice Korean Pavilion as a curator, but then we did an expo for Shanghai Expo as a pavilion. We pretty much did every pavilion that comes with a genre, like Soviet Pavilion at the end. But somehow, but what I like, you mentioned about this sort of purity or this stillness. I think that's what pavilion does. Because that's why it's able to move around and does something very particular and specific and pure and precise, and which has to do with also temporal quality. So it's a time specific. It's only not occupying the space alone, but very specific time period. And we're try to be smart about 1 week pavilion should be a very cheap hula hoops to some other inflatable ones, and we try every medium, and it really allow us to think of it architecture is not like this is a fixed permanent thing versus some disposable, but you have this full spectrum of life cycles, and I think that's what was one of the driving things to touch upon this temporal sort of position of this each one. But yeah, I mean, this it looks somehow never ending. But recent pavilions are actually quite different also because we are now doing a pavilion, but in a kind of a traditional Korean way. Because I realized these two pavilions. I was talking two different pavilions. One is more this um, Western sense in this kind of a bringing other worlds, other time, Roman ruins, and something like that, or Chinese gazebo. But traditionally, Korean is more like here and now, and it's about very particular location in this something nice to look at. So you build something in a very humble way. But also that itself creates its own constellation. So right now we're doing something that is engaging with simultaneously two locations, engaging with these historic figures in the past that has built this old traditional pavilion, and somehow we are responding to it and the site next to it, and then somehow it creates a nice set of a constellation of narratives, let's say. So again, this thing kind of evolves, and because I really like to move on once we explore the thing. Of course, certain idea comes back and informs, but so that's yeah.
More questions?
Hi. Um, I have a question related to the building that is the three attached towers.
Yes,
Yes, in
Swiss
Tirana.
tower.
Um, Even from what I have seen from the projects made abroad by you and that I had seen before, I was always inspired by the way you use spaces for the public. and how they usually don't go high rise, but usually are spread and made one with the landscape and not very disturbing with its surrounding. Meanwhile, forgive me, it's just an opinion, but for this tower, it looks too massive in a city where I'm living, and I'm seeing this actually being done everywhere. My question is, since in every project you took into consideration the public and their opinion, how was in this project public involved? And also, you can see that there are two-story houses with these roofs, very small. And was it taken into consideration how these people will feel in the morning waking up and seeing this huge building above their small little houses?
Yes, yes. No, I think I appreciate your comment, and I mean the volume was now 30 story, but it was once 49 story, and it was a constant also negotiation. But I do I do see this contrast in scale, which I presented in my own city. It's also as some kind of a condition that could enrich the city. One, I mean, of course, for me, I don't think I ever want to design more than 50-story tower anywhere, because it just creates incredible inefficiency structurally, and also like, unnecessarily you have so much, you rely on machines and so on. And unless you have some other symbolic needs for that. But in this case, for us, yes, we did our best to create this as a collective form instead of like Montparnasse Tower. But also, when you see this cityscape now, there's one of the images that maybe I didn't show you, but there is this kind of a new verticality happening, as almost not probably going to be forest. But one of the things I think is I'm much more comfortable with is also the climate here. I think that's also another plus, because Hong Kong Albania is in between Hong Kong and Seoul. In Hong Kong, you have this more extreme conditions, like these very small needle towers, very tall next to very small buildings next to it. I do think that has somehow happened because, first of all, the dense way of living is quite good, but also it's warm, so you don't get this shadow snow. Because Korea, we can never imagine that, and I think Albania seems to be somewhere in between. So I'm hoping this area idea was that also mostly tower. Also, what I've been creating in Korea, certain period intensely, was really about not really contributing to the city around it, what is existing. And mostly at best, it's about beautiful form and wow, it's like something to look at, or maybe structural innovation, but that could also be some kind of meaning. But I think in this case, I like what I'm motivated by is the space that is contained in it. I think that gives that neighborhood in something in a different scale, but it could be accessible and approachable. Yeah, of course, it would some may not be I don't know, too excited to see it because it's a very different scale. But I do appreciate your expressing the concern. Enough? Maybe not.
Okay, so I think the time is up for now. So I want to thank you very much for your
Yes.
presentation and for the answers.
Thank you for being attentive. Thank you very much. Thank you.
But before we leave the stage, maybe we can make a small announcement for this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yes, we want to invite you to the opening exhibition of another architect who's he lives in Tirana, but he's from Kosovo. It's Besnik Rainca's exhibition between Mercury and Mars is home. So you're all invited to the opening on Friday. Thank you very much. Bye.